Good afternoon, everybody. It's Rob Knowles of the North Links Health and Safety Group here. Mindful of all the work that's going on in the background by Emma and the team. I know she's been sending out lots of information for you to keep you updated. We can't hold our regular meetings, so what we thought we'd try and do is jump on the back of technology, and we'd introduce a few other topics into the group. So, as you know, the North Links Health and Safety Group was ahead of its time. It was formed in 1947. And a lot of work that it did was then brought together nationally through the 1974 Health and Safety Act, and health and safety in itself has continued to evolve. And I think it's very important that we continue that evolution. So today I've invited some people I know, a great team in Brig from Napton Wright Marketing, social media agency, who are going to give us a little bit of an insight into how social media can help us with our health and safety messages. So Alex, thank you very much. Rob, good afternoon to you too. I'll hand over to whichever one of you two is going to start. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I'll jump in first to save the Rob and Rob confusion. My name's Alex, and I set up Napton Wright 6 years ago as a social media consultancy, and since we've grown into a full creative marketing agency. I spent some time working at Facebook itself in London, so I've got direct experience there. And 9 months ago, Rob Jefferson joined us, so I'll hand over to him to give us a little bit of background.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, hello everyone. Yes, I'm Rob Jefferson, the relatively new Director of Marketing at Napton Wright. Alex poached me from Doncaster Council. So I've actually had about 16 years of public service in various councils and housing associations and sort of educational schemes and what have you. So I've come on board after leading a creative team over at Doncaster Council, so focusing on their social media and the website and the intranet. And now sort of work alongside Alex and the team at Napton Wright to work on client marketing campaigns and to ultimately get results for the businesses that we work with. So, I think we're looking forward to discussing the topic of social media today. It's something that Alex and I, have both personal and professional interests in. And hopefully, with some of your members, Rob, we can help them on a journey around embracing social media more.
I want to add in there that we also, being based in Brig, have a huge interest in making northern Lincolnshire as forward-thinking as possible across every sector. So we come across lots of businesses, lots of industries that say social media isn't for us, and actually we like to turn that around and make people aware that social media is for everybody.
Yeah, that's great, Alex. And I'm sure, I don't know this, but I'm sure that social media activity does go on. Whether it goes on in a kind of a structured way and there are dedicated people in companies, I don't know. But bear in mind that the companies in the group vary in size, location, in different subsectors of the various sectors, but they've all got that focus on health and safety. And if we can somehow use social media to elevate that would be great. So over to you again.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. So one of the key things about social media as a tool for marketing is that it's a great way to build trust. And when you think about health and safety functions within an organization and organizations that are specifically focused on delivering health and safety solutions, they've got to start building that trust. And when I started talking about doing presentations and workshops and seminars about social media, I found this advert from the 1950s called the Man in the Chair ad. And it was from some magazine publishers, and it was all this stereotypical kind of bloke in his 50s or 60s, CEO of a big organization, and he's sitting there grumpy on his chair, and he's saying to this person who's coming to try and sell him something, I don't know your organization, I don't know who you are, I don't know your values, don't know what you stand for, I don't know your history, and then a few more questions. Says, so what are you trying to sell me? And actually, that was an advert that was placed by a publication to promote their own advertising services. And if you actually scoot forward 70 years from when that was created, the same applies now. You've got to build that trust as an organization. So It doesn't matter whether you're trying to sell something to somebody, whether you're trying to recruit somebody into your team, or you're just trying to generate a bit of PR, a bit of communications for your organization. You've got to get that message out about what you stand for, and the fact that maybe you've had 30 years of great successes, you've had an unblemished record, you've worked with loads of a variety of sizes and scales of organizations, you've got a great team on your side. Social media is a really wonderful platform for getting that out there, whether it's what people traditionally see as the professional platform, which is LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter for that more sort of in the moment, day-to-day type communication, whether looking at Facebook's fantastic for driving traffic to a website. So the way that we as an agency approach social media is not as this silo where it's only cool people and kids and people with silly videos and things like that. It's actually part of the broader marketing mix. It's an intrinsic part of that marketing mix, and it's not really social media anymore. It's just online marketing. And the reason that has developed so effectively is that platforms like the forerunners, Facebook, Twitter, they understood what makes people tick, how people engage with each other, how people engage with brands, how brands engage with people. And they've understood that and used it to help their platforms grow. So when you think about any social media platform, any digital platform, the most important thing to them is their user base. And so if the users are having a good time, then they're going to bring more people in. And if they bring more people in, then the platform grows and grows and the scope for revenue increases. But if you as a business are having positive results or seeing positive results, you're engaging well, and you feel like your social media is displaying your business in the right way, you're going to stay there and you're going to keep using it. And so it's not something to be scared of. It is something that lots of people are, however, scared of, because they worry about what people might think or what people might say or the feedback or anything like that. But actually, if you take Rob's experience in the last sort of 5 years in particular when he was at Doncaster, I'm sure he'll explain a little bit more about how they approached it. As a local authority, your instant reaction, I'm sure, is, well, why would you be on social media just to get abuse? So I'll hand over to Rob and he can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things you talked about there was kind of the fear around the use of social media, and in the role that I had at Doncaster Council, it was about working with the entire employer base and the employees to actually become more confident in the use of social media. So we ran a series of workshops with some of the elected members and what have you, and I can see why there's that kind of fear and reticence to use it for lots of different reasons. You've got the kind of the big thing at the moment is the kind of the misinformation agenda and fake news, and obviously that's really topical at the moment given what's going on in the States and what have you. So there's again, it comes back to what Alex was saying about trust. What do you trust online? What information do you actually take in and think this is what I should be believing? But also in terms of your own kind of persona and putting yourself out there and having discussions and conversations, you can get tripped up and end up having something that can result in you as an individual be publicly shamed across the world. There's plenty of stories of people who have maybe said a choice comment maybe as a joke that's been misinterpreted and spread widely across the world and resulted in them being sacked from their jobs and all the rest of it. So it's understandably there's a lot of fear there. I think the way that we would always suggest that people approach it is you don't even necessarily have to get involved straight away with the conversations. You don't necessarily have to post anything straight away. Start as a bit of a lurker. You can go onto all these platforms. You can sign up for an account and just follow a few individuals and topics of interest and that kind of thing that actually are relevant to you as an individual, both sort of personally and professional. And just see kind of the conversations that are going on. You don't have to participate in those conversations straight away. Just get a feel for those platforms, even if it's something you do for weeks or months. Just to sort of understand how they work, both from a sort of technical perspective, but also in terms of kind of the etiquette and that kind of thing around the use of them. But I think if you are sort of wanting to take those tentative steps into, you know, saying something online or using social media to communicate, one of the things I often see go wrong, or is maybe the wrong approach, is to start broadcasting things. You know, the clue is in the title. It's social media. It's about having those conversations, not about necessarily just broadcasting messages. And, you know, particularly within the public sector and with company accounts, there's kind of a belief that, you know, you should be maybe putting a press release out on there, or just sort of posting a news story. And you can do that. Absolutely, you can do that. You know, the tools are there to share images and links and that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's about those positive conversations and about building those networks as you would, you know, offline, but doing it online as well. And, you know, the particular professional tools that are built for that, including LinkedIn and Twitter, are obviously great for that. But, you know, it is ultimately about not necessarily thinking about broadcasting. It's about having those conversations online.
Okay, thank you. That's a really interesting point that raised in my mind while you were talking there, Rob. The thing about being a lurker. So I did smile, it's a great term. But one thing I have experienced whilst being with the group is they are good at sharing information, in the sense that they don't hold on to proprietary information. You know, they're quite happy, they're open-minded. And while they're having a cup of tea waiting for presentations to start, I've often heard conversations from people in different companies expressing views and sharing kind of things. So I'm hoping that one of the things this will achieve is, once this goes onto the group health and safety website and on your website, is in comments people say, oh, we already do that, or yeah, we could do with a bit more of that. So this is an electronic version, if you like, of people sharing knowledge, albeit anecdotally. But what I loved about the thing about the lurker bit is, it's a great kind of safe way in which to look at things, but also you can get loads and loads of information off there, stuff you didn't know, or it reinforces things you're already doing because another company in another area is doing something you're doing. And one of the great things I've always said about innovation is plagiarize with pride and where appropriate permission. So if you're seeing good quality activity happening over there, look at it. And this is a great and easy way to do it. So yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So
yeah,
so I was going to say, so you've got to be a little bit, you know, particularly in, you know, health and safety, with the information that you're sharing, that you do acknowledge if it has been plagiarized. And I think that it's again, you know, building the trust. It's a really important way to say, actually, we're open, honest, transparent as an organisation, and this is how we're going to use it. You know, we're not just sliding into social media because everyone else is. Actually, we've got a purpose for it, and we're going to use it. And I think that's something that Doncaster did particularly well. Because, you know, it wasn't just suddenly one day they're talking about taking the bins out in a really kind of factual, pragmatic way, and the next day they're having a bit of fun with it. Actually, it was brought in, and we're going to change the way that we're doing things. And
I'll just qualify I don't condone plagiarism. I thought it was However, what I have seen done very well is, in a different sector, was this guy, an engineer. He said, this is great work, I'd love to know more about this, on a tweet. And then when he investigated it, he publicly thanked them for providing the kind of stimulus, if you like, for doing it. So the plagiarism bit can be edited out, but that's clearly what I meant.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's a platform that's out there forever. So just make sure that everything is, again, collaboration is brilliant. A lot of people love it.
Again, just sort of going back to the lurking point as well. I mean, the other aspect of it that I think really these platforms are often quite underrated for, and particularly Twitter, and you know, it's something that I've had so much value from over the years, and that's as a tool for continued professional development. You've got so many articles on there. You've got so many sort of, I don't want to say thought leaders because it's one of those horrible terms that you hear bandied about, but, you know, there's so many people who are so knowledgeable and willing to share information and share knowledge and advice and support, that it is it's a vast learning tool. And I think, you know, business leaders and specialists in no matter what sector or profession, you know, can get a lot of advantage from that if they, you know, choose to use this to support their traditional sort of forms of learning. And also in the fact that, you know, it does open up the ability to have conversations with these experts and specialists. You know, you can get a direct contact with these individuals who, you know, you'd maybe see traditionally at a conference or you know, maybe at a lecture or whatever, and if you get a chance to speak to them afterwards, great. Whereas you have a direct way to communicate with these specialists using these online tools, no matter where they are in the world. So, you know, I would always recommend social media tools, not just for that aspect of communication and you know, the traditional conversation you expect to have, but actually as a learning tool as well, and the networks that can be built around those kind of learning tools. And, you know, especially LinkedIn groups, that's a really good example of, you know, joining groups around a particular topic or theme, and collaborating with individuals who, you know, are similar to you or share similar interests, so you can share those ideas and knowledge between you. It's set up for that kind of thing.
You tend to find that a lot of social media ends up being signposts, whether that's, you know, a digital signpost to your organization or to yourself as an expert on a particular subject, or to someone that you know who's an expert in the subject. You know, often, you know, you find you tag a friend in a tweet, or you tag a business connection in a tweet and say, look, you know, you need to talk to Rob about X, Y, Z. And it's about sort of fostering that environment of knowledge sharing, openness, and encouraging people to do the right thing, I think. And it's, you know, if everybody starts sharing the knowledge in the right way. So with a lot of, you know, as an agency, we've worked with lots of professional organisations, and by that I mean professional services, you know, legal teams and accountants practices and things, and they've got to be very careful about what they put out online. You know, you can't be seen to be giving advice necessarily, and you can't be, you know, you don't want to put stuff out that you normally charge for. But they're happy just to point people in the right direction. You can find out some more here at, you know, the HMRC website. You know, in the world of health and safety, you know, share good versus bad practice. You could ask people questions about, you know, what do you think has gone on here? Why do you think this particular scene is not absolutely spot on? But what, you know, then you're giving people kind of a moment just to think about something. They might not work in anything to do with health and safety, but they will be interested in it, and they'll be interested to know that businesses are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I've just sort of seen, if you like, something else as well. So builds on the trust theme as well. And we all know the way recommendations work. If you tell me about a great restaurant, Alex, I'm X% more likely to go there. And likewise, Rob, if you tell me of a bad experience, it's disproportionate, the amount. So there's the trust thing there. But there's also lots of great information. I mean, for example, the Health and Safety Executive website, it's an absolute library, electronic library, lots of information. It gets updated regularly, etc., etc. But this thing about trust in human beings and recommendations, I think, so I read something that you put out, Rob, that now that we know one another, you know, I'm more likely to go, okay, yeah, this guy, I know him. So therefore, my reception of that information is greater than somebody who just says, oh, you need to look at the health and safety website. That's not to disrespect the health and safety website at all. So it's that kind of human element in there as well. So the trust and a likelihood of doing that. So yeah, this is all fascinating stuff. So thank you very much, guys.
It's kind of interesting that you know, up until maybe 9 months ago, you didn't know who Rob Jefferson was, and that's not, you know, he's not a movie star yet. But you know, he shares a lot of interesting stuff.
No pressure,
only through working with us that maybe you came across him, and you learn a lot more about it. And actually, you sort of think, well, you know, there are probably more people who want to read that because it's interesting, not because you want to promote Rob. But then you can take it from the organisation point of view. You know, if somebody in your particular team is really, really good at what they do, and they're sharing stuff, that can only reflect well on your business. It really can. And so it's looking at the sum of the parts and then the whole, and encouraging people, you know, we're going to use social media, you know, how about you use LinkedIn in this particular way? You know, how about you use Facebook in a particular way? It'd be great if you shared the company posts every so often. No obligation to do so, but it, you know, it's a good way of saying to employees, teams, that, you know, if you enable the business to get more reach, more coverage, pick up more clients, pick up more work, then that can only benefit you because the business becomes better off. Maybe there's more promotion available, there's more budget available for wages and things like that, particularly, you know, as we look at the challenges imposed upon us by the coronavirus restrictions. You know, businesses have to fight for everything that they can get, and if you an effective use of social media that shows a business's personality. Every business has a personality. It's just getting to the heart of it. And if every business has, you know, in the health and safety sector, just comes out really steady, and, you know, we work in health and safety, this is what we do, here's the latest information from the HSE, this is what you can do for ISO, whatever it might be, people are going to go, oh, yeah, I can see that from 1,000 other organisations. Whereas actually, if they say, this organisation is run by 3 people, they're school friends, they all work in the sector, and they came together to produce it, and actually one of them likes cycling, one of them likes skiing, all that kind of stuff. You start building that personality, and people start to sort of engage with it. And if you look at the way that people use LinkedIn now, I love the fact that people use it more to show their personality than they do to share boring articles and self-promotion. You know, I don't mind if people sort of say, you know, I took a great bike ride around northern Lincolnshire, I took in some new villages that I hadn't seen before, and actually I had a really good think about how my business is going. You know, it's all about that person and all about the way that people are positioning themselves.
On the note of engagement, I see another opportunity here. So you just talked about the business engaging with the external world. So thinking about the internal world of their own business, their own employees. Often they might not see them because of shifts or geographic dispersions. There's lots of reasons why, not least of all pre-COVID, why people didn't get into a room. So I think social media can be used, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as a great internal kind of messaging tool to reinforce messages. I mean, I was on a webinar today where somebody mentioned we know what common sense is and we know what's good for us, but often there's a big air gap between the two. And she gave the example about eating 5 a day, you know, 5 fruit and veg a day, but how many of us do it? So the way we try and do this is, you know, messaging, keep people up to speed, keep people up to date. And I've worked with an organisation that traditionally the age and demographic of the management team would be against the team leader level having their own WhatsApp group, for example. But they were actually they'd mulled it over and thought it was a good thing, and they didn't want to be part of it. So it was for their own benefit. And of course, in there will be humour and all the rest of it, but it was also used as a tool to get messages out to people quickly and to reinforce messages.
Yeah.
So internally, yeah, Rob, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, sadly there are still cases where, you know, these online communication tools, social media, WhatsApp groups, that kind of thing, is still frowned upon by a lot of businesses. And this, again, it comes partly back to that fear factor, partly around kind of security and confidentiality concerns, and you know, GDPR, I think, unsettled a lot of people as well about sharing stuff online. But, you know, ultimately, these tools, like anything, can be used as a force for good or bad. And I would wager that on the whole, you know, these most people, the good actors, if you like, are using them in a positive way. And it's about making sure that, you know, you've got this kind of corporate understanding and support from those that are maybe leading the organisation, if it's a bigger organisation. And, you know, we were fortunate at Doncaster Council that we had, you know, a chief exec at the time who was very pro social media and supported the types of stuff that we wanted to do on social, and to build a kind of persona and the brand, if you like, of the council. And, you know, coming back to a point that what Alex was saying before about being human, and you know, sort of, if you look at a council, and you know, with the greatest respect to the health and safety colleagues who will be watching this, you know, I suppose it's seen as quite a bureaucratic organisation, or not the most interesting of things to discuss. But actually, that's a good opportunity. You know, let's reverse that kind of concept and that expectation that actually it's dull, it's boring, it's corporate, it's lethargic. You know, in some respects, anybody that works in a public sector organisation or within health and safety or whatever, you know, it's an opportunity to very easily flip that on its head, produce content that's really engaging and different and unique. And that's really what the whole social media strategy at Doncaster Council was built on. And, you know, that's continued long since I've left, and which has been great to see. that, you know, they're coming out with things that you would not expect a council to do. And there's no reason why, you know, a health and safety organisation or professional can do that. But I think what it comes down to is a few different things. One, you need to be clear on kind of what your tone of voice is going to be, in terms of the way that you communicate via social media, either as an individual or as a business. I think two, you need to try and be consistent with that, because if one day, you know, you're putting out a press release, the next minute trying to be funny, it's going to be jarring, I would suggest, to the audience. So it's about finding that kind of gradual ongoing balance between what you're putting out there and almost creating kind of a longer term narrative for the organisation in terms of its communications. And I think also it's about being open to the idea of being a bit self-deprecating, you know, actually just take the mick out yourself a little bit, be human. People like that. People like humour online. That's what goes down well. And, you know, let's use that to our advantage, not to the point where it obviously affects our reputation or, you know, it makes us look foolish, but actually poke a bit of fun at yourself, and it goes down a long way sometimes.
Thank you. So that's a great few pointers there, Rob, which will partly answer a question which I've got for you. So you mentioned the lurker earlier. So let's just sort of use that persona and say the lurker's now sort of 3 months into this, he's lurking or her lurking, and you know they've got a little bit of confidence with this. Now bear in mind that probably the majority of people in the workplace these days have a smartphone, have access to social media at home, etc. So nobody's going to be blind to this. So this person who's sort of generating the confidence to do this, bear in mind what you've just said. Don't be afraid, you know, understand your tone and message, etc. And also the very fact that their primary focus is on health and safety. What kind of practical advice could you give to what I used to label myself an occasional tweeter? I still do. You know, somebody whose focus isn't to go around to create social media, but it is to actually occasionally see an opportunity to go, oh, we've done really well here. So what kind of advice could you steer people, or direction could you steer people in there, please?
I think, again, there's kind of this social media is sometimes put up on a bit of a pedestal of this weird and wonderful magical tool that, you know, has got a lot of fear and problems attached to it. And I think a lot of it is just coming back to a bit of a common sense approach. You know, don't say anything on there that you wouldn't be happy saying in a pub, for example, because, you know, it's effectively a public broadcasting mechanism, and you know, it only takes kind of one misstep to be broadcast around the world. That is genuinely something that could happen. But at the same time, you know, you can't be afraid of that all the time. It's just purely about just thinking about before you tweet. And look, we've all been there. We've seen political rants that are on social media, and the temptation is just to dive straight in. I'm as guilty as the rest of them. Sometimes it's just cathartic enough just to type out the message you want to send, delete it, and actually just send something that's got a little bit more diplomacy behind it all. So I think it just comes down to common sense human values around just being careful, just being sensible. Sometimes, like Alex is really good at on LinkedIn, just poke the bear a little bit sometimes to see what kind of conversations you have as a result of that. You can't see him at the minute, but he's raising his eyebrows and smiling sweetly. But, you know, I think it's just about not being boring, but also not being silly and dangerous with it. You know, it's just about being who you are, being human, and, you know, just being respectful of others ultimately.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, clearly, sort of health, safety, compliance, all that kind of thing. It doesn't lend itself to being very exciting, but that's the way it should be. That's absolutely the way it should be. So I guess the challenge is about seeing an opportunity, or whether it's to thank somebody for the great work they've done. I don't know what the opportunity is, so it is about kind of raising that profile a little bit and being proud of being a health and safety professional and being proud of being in that environment.
Sorry,
just to come in on that, Rob. I think one thing we find often works very, very well on social media in terms of content and content ideas is showing behind the scenes of somewhere or something. You know, that's where it becomes an interesting eye into the world of somebody and their profession. And yes, there's absolutely, I guess, tedious and boring aspects of health and safety, but it's there for a reason. It's there to protect people. And actually, you know, you often see these posts on social media when things go wrong, and there's a human interest in that kind of thing. And, you know, granted, there's some pretty macabre stuff that you can see on there if you go hunting for it. But ultimately, you know, there will be humorous aspects of the profession that I think social media will lend itself to demonstrate and portray kind of the behind the scenes aspect to it, and why it kind of works. Alex, sorry, I think you were going to come in on that as well.
Oh, it's actually built quite nicely on that, in that there are any number of organisations who have a health and safety function, and they need to be proud of that, or offer health and safety services. And they've all read the same books, they've all been on the same courses, they've all got the same industry qualifications. The difference is the service. The difference is, you know, generally the people behind it, the processes that they have in place. And that is where social media can really come to the fore, because if you've got somebody who is, you know, really engaging, very knowledgeable and warm in their tone, then, you know, get them out there. You'd probably, you know, send them to your most important clients, because you know they're going to continue to build that relationship. So, you know, it's about, you know, the difference on social media is about creating that brand persona that Rob was talking about earlier, about the tone of voice, and, you know, what makes organisation A different from organisation B. Well, it could be something as simple as how they treat their team and how their team feel about working for them. And you don't need to go overboard and show pictures of the team eating cakes all the time or whatever it might be. It's just a case of showing that people are happy, and, you know, happy chickens lay more eggs. That's what you need to be doing. And I think that the idea is that you use social media in that way, and it's the way of standing out from the crowd. It's a way of driving people to your website, or driving people to events that you're hosting, or driving people to offers that you have, or driving people even to sort of case studies and examples of great work that you've done, testimonials, all that sort of stuff. Everything that, if someone was to sit next to you, whatever line of work they are in, and they say, "What do you do?" you can then talk to them in a sort of an enthusiastic and a positive way about what you do. And that's what comes onto social media. You're not just a health and safety organisation. You're not just a health and safety director within an organisation. You are a person who enables that organisation to do the great work that they do. You are the person that enables other organisations to be compliant with stuff, so that they can continue doing the great work that they do. They might do, you know, the clients, the customers of some of your group's members might well make really crazily exciting products or offer really crazily exciting services. If you are the health and safety consultants, or you're the people who guide them through something to enable them to do that, it goes back to that analogy that lots of, or that story that lots of people talk about, you know, the chap sweeping up around the rocket, and he helped put man on the moon. You know, I'm paraphrasing it, but everybody is involved in getting those products and services out there. So just, you know, think laterally, and I think that's the most important thing to bear in mind.
Just to pick up on a point you've said there, Alex, about, you know, the individuals in the organisation and sort of no matter what level they're at and what impact they have on the business, that often it is those frontline workers, and particularly on a bigger scale in a bigger organisation. It doesn't necessarily want to be kind of the corporate comms team that are always the ones that are putting the content out there and being on social media. Actually, it's those stories from the front line, those individuals who probably, when they look at their day-to-day role, to them, you know, it's fairly mundane, but actually to the outside world, it's fascinating. You know, and again, coming back to Doncaster Council, you know, the interest that we had around gritters and highways maintenance, and, you know, all the kind of the tasks that you don't really think a huge amount when you work there, actually to the outside world are phenomenally important. Something actually that went viral just this week, I think it was last week, was a video on TikTok, which is a relatively new video platform. And it was of a guy who must have worked for a council down south, and it was how they paint the you know, the little bicycle symbols on the cycle lanes. It was just him painting it, and it was a piece of art. You know, you see these things every day, but you never ever see how these are actually produced. So to expose that kind of relatively mundane thing to him out to the world, you know, tens of thousands, if not millions of people have now viewed that video, almost to the point where somebody said this should be a Netflix series. We should have, you know, more of these different things actually shown on a big platform.
Coming to a screen near you. Road Painter 3.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the other point you made there, which struck with me there, Rob, was you mentioned about it doesn't have to be the corporate comms team, etc. Quite a lot of our members won't have any of that. You know, there'll be small to medium-sized businesses who very understandably focus on what they do, and I'm not being rude to them when I say that they may not have thought about this. They may well have done it, and they may well have done it sporadically in the past. So for those people, I would hope that they would maybe reinvigorate their efforts. And for people who have not done it in the past, it's about recognizing how relatively easy it is, but at the same time, it doesn't take over your life. You know, we can't all do that thing that Marks and Spencer's did with Derva Kerwin and food. You know, turn a baked potato into food porn on multiple channels. We can't. That's not the aim of the game here. It's just get people recognizing that the social media exists. They've got the tools. There are opportunities, and it's now about just having that little bit of courage in some cases, or reinvigorating efforts in the past and sharing. Absolutely sharing best practice.
It's something I always say. You know, it's very easy to be on social media, but it's not easy to be good at it. And that comes down to really time. You know, as part, again, I don't want to keep banging on about Doncaster Council, but the big strategic change that we made at the council was investing time and effort into planning, into being creative, into getting multiple people around the table to come up with these wacky and wonderful ideas. So, you know, you do, if you're wanting to use it as a way to promote what you do and to build up a brand persona and all the rest of it, then you do need to have you know, that investment in time and effort into it, because it's otherwise you're just going to be putting stuff out there that maybe hasn't had a lot of thought around it, that's going to be safe. And it's only when you spend that time trying to be a bit more creative and to inject a little bit more humour and intrigue and interest and production quality, I guess, that, you know, it becomes a success. And that's the dilemma, because as you rightly say, Rob, you know, when you are a small enterprise, or it is just literally you as a one-person band, you know, that's tricky to you to have that time available to you to be able to take these things forward. I mean, you know, that's where you would maybe invest in a creative marketing agency, maybe, to help with that. But I would say that because I work in one.
Where are we?
Yeah.
You deserve that plug, guys. You deserve that. Yeah, indeed. Okay. So for your kind of starter, your guy or girl lurking, etc. What's the easiest and best platform to use to get started?
And it depends what the role. There's no right or wrong answer to that. There's no easy answer to that. Each platform has its own pros and cons. Twitter's great for just processing. Twitter's effectively a news feed of the day. You know, what's going on around the world. You can search for things. You can just, you know, look at it and things will come to you. There are funny things on there. There are educational things. There are things you don't want to see. There's anything really. It is a true reflection of the world in 280 characters and little videos and images. When you look at LinkedIn, it's, you know, building a professional network. Again, you've got to get to know the people. You've got to have a representation of who you are and what you do. Good for the company to have a company profile on there so that people can see what you're all about. Facebook is great for driving traffic to a website. And, you know, as a person, you know, Alex Wright has a personal Facebook profile, and I use that for keeping in touch with my friends, my family, and sharing bits and pieces of what we're up to. Napton Wright has its own Facebook page, and that is more about promoting the business and the six of us and what we're up to, and, you know, client successes and little bits of information, and driving traffic back to our website that way and building trust that way. And then you look at all the sort of, you know, Instagram for lots of images. Again, you can have personal and business on there. TikTok, Rob's mentioned, Snapchat. There's so much that you can do. When people say to me, I'm going to get social media right this year, you think, well, that's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year sorted for you, or 366 this year. You know, the best thing to do is to have a great website that is your online shop window, and then use these channels to send people to that shop window so that people can see what you're doing. And once you've gone from there, because you cannot, however large or small your team is, you can't be everywhere. You can't be having those communications. And the way that people use smartphones now, if somebody works in procurement, or the MD of a company thinks, oh, I just need to look something up. Maybe they need to look for a health and safety consultant, or they need to look for someone else. They will jump online day or night and do a quick Google search for it, or they'll go onto LinkedIn and they'll look at who the connections they know and say, can anyone recommend a provider of X, Y, and Z? They'll do that any day or night. And if you can be there in the palm of their hand for that moment, Clive Woodward says it's not about being in the right place at the right time, it's being in the right place all the time. So it's understanding how people are behaving and making sure that your business is there.
I think as well, it's about, being where your audience are. If you know your target market, if you know where they tend to hang out, if you like, online, that's probably where your initial focus should be. And I think just as a second point as well, that's an advantage probably to most people, particularly if they're not kind of too hot on the technology and the confidence around using these platforms. There's quite a lot of convergence now around all of them in terms of functionality. You probably heard of Instagram stories, but that's really something that started on another network, and that's Snapchat. And now that kind of function has been rolled out through WhatsApp. It's in Instagram now. Facebook also has stories, and they're already trialing the concept, I think, of LinkedIn stories and Twitter stories. So, the kind of, there was a time when you'd have to be quite proficient in one or the other networks, and invested a lot of time in that. But I think the barrier for entry has been reduced somewhat, and you can use the similar sort of techniques and functionality across all the networks now. So again, if you're limited on time and you're limited on your kind of technical expertise, it's probably about focusing on kind of where your kind of key target market is first and foremost, or where the kind of professionals are that you want to network with, or whatever are. Try that and then build out from there, really.
Great. Thank you both. So is there anything else you would want to discuss before I attempt a kind of a summary for our viewers?
I think the next step is for you to attempt that summary, Rob.
Thanks. Rob?
No, other than to say, you've just got to get started. Get on there, lurk a bit, have a look, see what's going on. And when you feel confident, start contributing to the conversation.
My summary.
I've recently shifted, as Alex explained at the beginning, I've recently shifted completely from one sector to another. And, I built up quite a good network amongst the public sector and with individuals across the country. And I'm effectively starting from scratch now around the private sector and local businesses. So it's only when you put yourself out there that you start to build those networks, much as you do offline, that you start to get good connections, and you start to build those relationships, and start to meet some interesting people ultimately.
Okay, thanks. So you nicked a bit of my summary there, but well done. No, right, for me, representing the group and its members, so that was a couple of great conversations there, lots of rich conversation there. So broadly speaking, if we look externally and externally first, it's a great opportunity for businesses to be themselves, tell the world what they are, they can advertise. And I think the word you used was, Alex, if I can picture the MD looking for a service, and if you're there popping up on his phone, and as Woodward said, if you're in the right place all of the time, it's a great thing. But it also, there's that kind of industry credibility thing here. I'm sure that people do go on other companies' rivals' websites and look at what they're doing, the good news stories. From an internal perspective, it's a great opportunity to reinforce the trust, build the trust, re-engage or engage, reinforce messages. Remembering, of course, and this kind of took me a little while personally to get my head around, not the fact that social media is here to stay, but it's 24/7. So people will be reading emails at crazy hours of the day and various things. So you can reach message, or you can get messages and reach your employees and your teams beyond the gates of the workplace. And I guess the other thing here is, okay, so we kind of tongue-in-cheek said about the lurker. Have a go. Yeah, you can safely observe and learn that way, sort of learn by osmosis. But to quote that great Canadian coach whose name escapes me, I think Wayne Goretzky, you will miss 100% of the shots that you never take. I wonder where I heard that first, Alex. But yeah, so have a go, by all means, have a go. But if you do nothing else about this, read this, start a conversation in the threads underneath, get talking to people, get yourself comfortable with social media, and let's get talking about this. Let's get it used more. So for me, guys, that just leaves me to thank you very much indeed